That mail must be delivered, or there must be a dead Marine at the post of duty. That was part of an order issued by Secretary of the Navy Edward Denby on November 11, 1921. What was going on in the United States that made such an order necessary? Well, we have to go back to the beginning of the Harding administration and his appointment of his new Postmaster General. Will H. Hayes had gone down in history as the man who was hired to clean up Hollywood's image after the Fatty Arbuckle scandal. However, before he took the job as chairman of the Motion Picture Producers and Distributors of America, he was President Warren Harding's pick to be Postmaster General. He had been Harding's successful presidential campaign manager, so this is repayment for that. Now, after managing the campaign for Harding's presidency of the United States, Hayes was appointed Postmaster General. What Hayes didn't realize or didn't think was too serious was the fact that the U.S. Postal Service was under attack. No, not under attack by Congress or Harding's political enemies. Postal Service was under actual attack. The trains carrying the mail were being robbed for the mail sacks carrying the money. Now today, if we send money or deposit a payroll, all we have to do is go online, and with a few keystrokes, the money is deposited into the right account. Most people use direct deposit for their paychecks, so there is no need to ship large sums of cash all over the country. Now, that wasn't the case in the early 20th century. Large sums of cash were constantly being shipped by the Postal Service across the country. The main method of transportation at that time was by train. The only security on the trains for the mail were the postal inspectors. Now, postal inspectors date back to 1775, the Second Continental Congress, appointed by Benjamin Franklin. On August 7, 1775, Franklin appointed William Goddard as the first postal surveyor of the newly found American postal system. Now, his job was basically inspecting the integrity and security of the postal routes, regulating post offices, and auditing the accounts. In 1801, the postal surveyors were then upgraded and redesignated as special agents. Now, in 1830, the special agents were redesignated again as an agency within the Postal Service. In 1880, the next iteration would be the Post Office Inspector. Now, the most recent upgrade was in 1854 to the present day, and that's where we have the postal inspectors that we know of now. Whatever the designation was, their job remained constant, protecting the mail, postal employees, postal facilities, and property, as well as enforcing federal law concerning the U.S. mail. Now, by the 1920s, the job of postal inspector became very hazardous. When we read about the 1920s, we think about the roaring 20s, the economic boom, bootleg liquor, and the rising stock market. However, the first 2 years of the decade, America was in a deep recession. You could almost call it a depression. Now, the recession of 1920-21 was characterized by extreme deflation, the largest one-year percentage decline in almost 140 years of data, millions of men recently discharged from the Army and looking for work when there wasn't any to be had. The situation was ripe for a rise in crime. New York Herald, February 13, 1921, ran an interview given by the head of the Secret Service, William Moran. The headline read, "Greatest Crime Wave, 1920, Bank Robbers, Counterfeiters, Forgers, especially active in easy money hunt." The article states Chief Moran attributes the greatest increase in crime to, first, the unsettled conditions following the war, and second, to Prohibition. Though we qualified both these statements, the major unsettled conditions at that time was industry readjusting from wartime production of munitions to peacetime production of consumer goods. Couple that with large numbers of returning vets looking for housing and jobs, and you have a recipe for economic disaster. Now, when the economy is bad, some people will turn to crime to make ends meet, or make easy money, so they thought. So in 1920, the robberies of the U.S. mail trains began. Speculation began almost immediately that organized crime was involved in the robberies. On February 12, 1920, the Indiana Daily News ran a story titled, "6 Held for Postal Theft." The article itself stated, according to the Post Office Department, the 6 belonged to a ring believed to be operating in every large city of the United States. They are alleged to have a regular system for stealing soldiers' bonus checks, insurance payments, allotments for injury, and AEF death payments from the mails. Although these thefts of packages were off a mail truck, the post office connected it to a nationwide organized theft ring. The next major postal theft came on May 14, 1920. The Casper Daily Tribune headline read, "Bandit engaged by police army after robbery. New Orleans Limited held up. Policeman killed." The paper said it was one of the most daring train robberies of recent years. The 22-year-old former railway mail clerk boarded the train near the town of Kankakee. Now the mail clerk, Walton, stepped into the mail car and announced he was a postal inspector. He then drew a revolver and commanded, "Hands up." Walton tied up the 5 clerks, then using the clerk's key, he picked out and rifled the bags containing the money, remarking, "It's easy when you have inside information." Walton stuffed the money into the travel bag and left the train at the South Chicago stop. Yeah, but within 15 minutes, Walton was stopped by 2 police officers, William A. Roberts and John Kendrick. Roberts stepped forward to question Walton. Walton fired through his coat, killing Roberts with a shot to the head and his side. Kendrick opened fire, causing Walton to drop the bag. Now, when Walton ran to a nearby apartment building and barricaded himself inside, the building was quickly surrounded by 100 armed riflemen from the Chicago Police Department. For over an hour, the police unloaded hundreds of rounds into the apartment building. Walton returned a steady volume of fire with his 2 guns. For well over an hour, the gun battle raged, and then Walton's fire from the building suddenly stopped. Chief of Detectives Mooney entered the room and found Walton on the floor, dead, with 4 bullets in his body. Now, Walton had managed to take $100,000. His dreams of wealth and an easy life were fulfilled for about 15 minutes. The Alexander Gazette reported on July 14, 1920, the robbers of the Atlantic Coastline train number 39, Jacksonville, Florida, were behind bars. The robbery was carried out by John Holder, age 25, an express manager, and L.R. Duke, age 20, a former manager, on Friday, July 9, 1920. The take on that job was only $7,000. After they bagged the money, according to their confessions, Duke threw the bag from the moving train and then went back to the spot later to pick up the bag. You know, I have to wonder what those 2 guys were thinking. I mean, at that time, Jacksonville was not the height of an urban center in the surrounding areas. So, I'm just wondering, what did those 2 decide to do? You know, standing around on a Friday night looking for excitement? I can hear it now. What did they say to each other? Well, what do you want to do tonight? I don't know. What do you want to do tonight? Hey, why don't we rob the train? Good idea. What do you think? Sure. I like it. See what happens when you leave young people unsupervised? Well, anyways, I digress. Now, things were quiet for a few months. Then, November 15, 1920, the Omaha Daily Bee broke the story of what would eventually become the largest mail robbery up to that date. The headline read, "Officials probe big mail theft. Postal agents hot on trail of robbers. Arrest expected hourly." Now, the Burlington registered mail car was robbed near Council Bluff on Sunday, November 13th. The robbers threw 10 sacks of registered mail from the train. What made this job so easy was the fact that the mail pouches were not in the specially constructed mail car. Basically, that was due to a car shortage that the train had, so they had to use ordinary baggage cars, which were not secure, and they used that to transport the mail. So, unsecured car, no guards in it, what could possibly happen? The mail pouches were from San Francisco. Nearly all the pouches contained currency heading to New York. Since the mail pouches were considered through mail, they were put in the storage car with no mail clerk assigned to the car. Why should they? Through mail, nobody's going to get in, right? Well, the train stopped at the Union Pacific Transfer Point in Council Bluff to pick up more cargo. Now, it was here that the robbers boarded the train. As the train was pulling out of the station, the robbers jumped up onto the iron step under the side door of the mail car. They broke the window, reached inside, unlatched the door. Now, the robbers made quick work of their task. They began throwing the mail pouches out the side door of the mail car. The clerk in charge, Den C. Newberry of the mail car, was riding in the empty car at the end of the train with the door open. His assailant, looking through the open door, noticed a black bag at the side of the track, and as he exclaimed to Newberry, "Look, there's a registered mail pouch." Newberry ran towards the mail car, gathering other mail clerks as they went. When they reached the mail car, they were unable to gain entrance due to the fact that the robber had chained the door shut. Pretty smart. Alright, so anyways, the train had only gone about 200 yards from the station. Now by this time the robbers had completed their heist. Newbury had to wait until they reached Council Bluff before he could report the theft. Newbury's alarm sent a whole host of agencies into action. Superintendent Worley from the Transfer Mail Station, Post Office Inspector Glenn, Captain Schaefer of the Council Bluff Police Force, Inspector Coble from the state, Summer Knox from the Department of Justice Bureau of Investigation, along with other federal agencies who could claim jurisdiction. Now, the following day, one of the robbery suspects was arrested. It seems 20-year-old Merrill Phillips confessed to his part of the crime. Phillips was a railway mail sorter. He had been employed on the Burlington line for 3 years. He claimed he knew his accomplices for a short period of time. They'd only met at a pool hall in Omaha to plan the robbery. Now, Phillips instructed his accomplices on what car the mail would be in and how to gain entrance to the car without drawing attention to themselves. He would ride up front with the engineer acting as lookout. The accomplices followed the train to the first stop at 11th Ave. While the train was stopped, the men jumped out of their car and followed Phillips' instruction, and they gained access to the mail car. They quickly threw the 10 sacks of mail into their car. They were able to complete the job before the train started moving again. They got away clean. Now Phillips, and this is the funny part, following the plan, left the train at the 11th Ave and calmly walked to 12th Street and 5th Ave to meet up with his partners. He waited and waited and waited. It finally dawned on him that his trusted associates gave him the shaft. To quote the news article, he finally concluded that they had double-crossed him after using him as a tool to further their plans. Okay, here's a valuable lesson from history. When you have only known a person or persons for a short time and they propose an illegal venture to make quick money, you really shouldn't believe them. You will be nothing more than a dupe, which is how the newspaper started to refer to Phillips. Great way to go down in history. All right, now this story gets better and better. One of the men Phillips fingered was named Frank Williams. He said Williams was one of the 2 men who robbed the train. Unfortunately for young Mr. Phillips, Frank Williams had an airtight alibi. The authorities had no choice but to release Williams. Phillips also decided to throw his parents under the bus when he told police that they knew of the planned robbery. He then doubled down and said there were at least 6 other people involved in the heist. By this time, the police were a little skeptical of Phillips' confession. As a matter of fact, the newspaper headline for the November 17, 1920 Omaha Daily Bee stated, "Dupe story in doubt." Kind of like that. Now, it did not take long before the authorities had all the perpetrators in custody, though. One after another confessed to their part in the crime, as well as turn on their associates. The ringleader, however, was still on the run. By November 21st, 1921, a young woman by the name of Elizabeth Peterson, who was engaged to a man by the name of Keith L. Collins, went to the police and reported that her fiancé had taken off, and she believed he was one of the train robbers. Within 15 days, the authority had every one of the suspects in custody except Collins. Now, he went on the run, but he was arrested in Westville, Oklahoma on December 21st, 1920. The take on this robbery was $3,500,000. Even though the culprits were arrested rather quickly, the fact that there was that kind of money to be made by robbing trains emboldened others to try. Now, 4 months into 1921, the newly appointed Postmaster General Will Hayes had to do something to stop the robberies of the United States Mail. The latest mail robbery occurred in Chicago on April 7th. The robbery took place at the Dearborn Street Station in broad daylight. 4 men, using revolvers, held up the mail truck outside the station. They estimated the take between $500,000 to $750,000. Also, during the first 4 months of 1921, 3 postal employees had been murdered during mail robberies. On May 3rd, 1921, Postmaster General Hayes authorized a reward of $5,000 for the apprehension and conviction of any mail robber. Hayes took it even a step further when he ordered postal employees to be armed and issued a shoot-to-kill order on May 15, 1921. This order was in response to 33 major mail heists over the last year, with the theft of $6,204,000, and only half of that money was recovered. Now, even though the orders were well publicized, the mail robberies still continued. From April to November 1921, $318,869 have been stolen from the U.S. Postal Service. Hayes was desperate to end the crime spree. So, what do you think he does? Well, here it is. At the November 8th Cabinet, Hayes requested President Harding to authorize the use of U.S. Marines as male guards with orders to shoot to kill. Harding approved of Hayes' plan and sent a short note to the Secretary of the Navy, Edward Denby, to order a detail as guard for the United States male as sufficient number of officers and men of the United States Marine Corps to protect the males from depredation by robbers and bandits. Hayes and Secretary of the Navy, Edward Denby, developed the overall plan to protect the male. The plan was announced the following day. Denby gave orders to Major General Lejeune to have the Marines guard the male. By November 11, 1921, 65 Marines were detailed to New York City, 25 to Philadelphia, 200 went to San Francisco, 25 to Dallas, 40 went to Chicago. The total number of Marines guarding the male was 53 officers and 2,200 men. Denby's orders to the Marines were to guard the male at all costs. They were to shoot to kill. Now, from the website We Are the Mighty, they quote Secretary Denby's orders to the Marines guarding the male and the 6 rules of the male guard, as well as the frequently asked questions from the training manual. Alright, so, if an order like this were given today, there would be a congressional investigation. Media would have a meltdown in the legality of the order, and the Secretary of the Navy would be forced to resign. But in 1920 and 1921, it was considered okay. Well, back in 1920, 1921, things were different. Okay, in the order or the letter to the men, he states, to the men of the male guard, you must, when on guard duty, keep your weapon in hand, and if attacked, shoot and shoot to kill. If 2 Marines are covered by a robber, neither must put up his hands, but both must immediately go for their gun. One may die, but the other will get the robber, and the male will get through. When our corps goes in as guards over the male, that male must be delivered, or there must be a Marine dead at the post of duty. There can be no compromise. Okay, now, here are the 6 rules for the male guard. 1. To prevent the theft or robbery of any United States male entrusted to my protection. 2. To inform myself as to the persons who are authorized to handle the male entrusted to my protection, and to allow no unauthorized persons to handle such male or have access to such male. 3. To inform myself as to the persons who are authorized to enter the compartment, that's the railway, coach, auto, truck, wagon, mailroom, etc., where males entrusted to my protection are placed, and to allow no unauthorized person to enter such compartment. 4. In connection with Special Order Number 3, to prevent unauthorized persons loitering in the vicinity of such compartment or taking any position from which they might enter such compartment by surprise or sudden movement. 5. To keep my rifle, shotgun, or pistol always in my hand or hands while on watch. 6. When necessary, in order to carry out the foregoing orders, to make the most effective use of my weapons, shotgun, or otherwise killing or disabling any person engaged in the theft or robbery, or the attempted theft or robbery of the males entrusted my sole protection. Now, Secretary Denby was not messing around. To back up these orders, the Marines were given the tools to do the job. The Marine Guards were armed with sawed-off shotguns, 45 automatic pistols. Now, to make sure everyone understood these orders, the frequently asked questions section of the Male Guard Training Manual left no doubt as to what was expected from the men in response to this robbery problem. Question. Suppose he, the robber, is using a gun or making threats with a gun and trying to escape. Answer. Shoot him. Question. Suppose the thief was apparently unarmed but was running away. Answer. Call halt at the top of your voice twice. If he does not halt, fire 1 warning shot. And if he does not obey this, shoot to hit him, which means shoot to kill. Question. Is it permissible to take off my pistol while on duty? For instance, when in the mail car riding between stations. Never take off your pistol while on duty. Keep it loaded, locked, and cocked while on duty. Question. Is there a general plan for meeting a robbery? The answer? Yes, start shooting and meet developments as they arise thereafter. Question. If I hear the command hands up, am I justified in obeying this order? No. Fall to the ground and, you guessed it, start shooting. Question. Is it possible to make a successful mail robbery? Answer. Only over a dead Marine. Denby expected the robbers to be shot dead, and if one Marine went down, then so be it. It was expected that the mail must be delivered or there must be a Marine dead at the post of duty. There can be no compromise. Now the interesting thing here is there was an anecdote actually. A young Marine was guarding depot, and I guess there was a suspicious character on the platform. He ordered the guy to go. The guy gave him lip. The Marine basically shot a round over his head. The guy looked in shock. He loaded his rifle again, and the guy started running away. And I think, if I can remember it right, he shot one more time. They were not messing around. So anyways, what's the results of having the Marines guard the mail? Well, the robbery stopped right away. Not one mail truck or mail train was robbed. Then, after 4 months, the Marines were withdrawn. This allowed the Postmaster, General Hayes, to train a specialized force of men to replace the Marines. It worked for a long time. And then, in 1926, though, the mail robberies began again. On October 14th, 8 men crashed into a mail truck and grabbed $100,000 worth of loot. The robbers used sawed-off shotguns and automatic weapons. Now, John Ency, a postal employee, unfortunately was killed when the bandits opened fire. 3 others were wounded. Postal employee Patrick Quinn, police officer Jacob Chrisman, and innocent bystander Arthur Decatur were all wounded. Now, Silent Cal, that's President Calvin Coolidge, wasting no time, he ordered the Marines to guard the U.S. mail. The orders went out on October 20th, 1926. For the next 4 months, 2,500 Marines were on duty to guard the mail. And by February 1927, the guard detail had been disbanded, and there were no more mail robberies from trucks, trains, or the postal facilities. So, what is the takeaway from this slice of history of ours? Well, interesting. Shoot-to-kill orders have a way of stopping crime. Granted, it is a little excessive, but it did stop the mail robberies. Another thing, don't mess around with an angry Marine who's given free rein and told you can shoot to kill. Because here's what's going to happen. They're going to shoot first, they will shoot last, and if anybody's alive, they're going to shoot again. Well, I hope you found this bit of history interesting. If you did, hit the like button. Please subscribe to my channel and ring the bell so you'll be notified when I post new content. Again, thank you for watching.